Good morning, everyone, and welcome to this special edition of The Rundown. I am your host, Craig DeLuz, and we all know that I don't do this alone.
Hey everybody, I'm Mike Poworski, and happy Monday. It's a slow dragon Monday. Uh,
Happy Monday. How was your weekend, sir?
Listen, I got to go see my brother's fourth wedding. He's kind of a slow learner, so it actually ended up being a very nice ceremony, very nice reception, and all the best for them. So him and his new bride.
Excellent. Well, hey, the fourth time's the charm, right?
Yeah, or the fifth or the sixth, we'll see. Yeah.
we shall see. Well, sir, look, I wanted to talk about this, and folks, just so you know, we decided we're going to commit this entire episode to the Georgia voting law because, well, some big things have been happening. There's some big news out there, and in particular, I know that it's impacting my good friend, Mr. Piwowarski. So I figured I would let him kind of take the lead and let you guys know what's going down, in case you've been on a desert island somewhere.
Thank you, Craig. Yeah, listen, folks. The news after we aired on Friday came out from the baseball commissioner's office that they were going to move the Major League Baseball's All-Star Game, which was to be held in Atlanta at SunTrust Park, there where the Braves play this year. Now, that's huge financially to the Atlanta area. Obviously, every major metropolitan area is hurting right now because of COVID and the financial dilemmas that's posed to people. So this was going to be a huge issue for them. They'd already planned on it, already been working towards it. Money's already been invested into it, and the commissioner's office decided they were going to get rid of it. Now, the ironic part about this is this was going to be a huge tribute to the late Hank Aaron because he was a Braves member for his entire career, except for when he went to the Milwaukee Brewers at his last season. But it was going to be a huge tribute to him. A race icon for African Americans. He was Jackie Robinson. We all know broke into it, but Hank Aaron was that first extreme incredible baseball player in that second generation of African American baseball players that broke in after Jackie did. And now that's gone. They don't know where they're going to move it yet. Major League Baseball Association doesn't know where they're going to move it yet, and they're not sure. They know that they're going to try and include Hank Aaron, but this was his town. This was his home. This is. You could still go out in the parking lot of the old ballpark there and see the wall that he hit his home run over. It is a record-breaking 715th home run to pass Babe Ruth. That's still in the parking lot there. It's absolutely amazing that baseball would do this. And Craig, I tell you, I'm sorry, I'm going to say it right now. It was moved because there's racists in Major League Baseball. We talked last week about the Baseball Association, the Players Association, and they were part of it. I will say that. The rest was this. There's an entity now in baseball called the Players Alliance, which sounds really good. Sounds like a great thing. Sounds like players getting together outside of the union. Because remember, I told you there were problems with that union last week. Well, this happens to be 100 Black African American players. And no issue with that. You want to have your own organization, you have your own organization. Everybody has it. We got the Italian American Club, German American Club. You want to have African American Club. I've never had an issue with that. But the commissioner called on them, and they got about half of them on the phone this last Friday. It was so about 50 of these baseball players, and the commissioner prefaced it with, "Well, there's racism going on in Georgia. What do you guys want to do?" Now, listen, baseball players have been in spring training for the past month. I mean, completely embedded in this. It's sun up to sundown kind of stuff. They're on COVID, lockdown restrictions as it is. There's nothing going on in their brain except for baseball. And all of a sudden, the commissioner says, "Hey, we want to do this." Then I'm telling you, 90% of these guys had no idea what was going on. When the commissioner said there's racism, you got this organization that was started after the George Floyd death. Obviously they're going to jump all over that. Hey, oh yeah, it's racism. Let's move it. Let's move it without anybody thinking of it. Craig, there was also corporate pressure in here.
Well, you know how hasty it was It was so hasty that they didn't even have another venue, another location, another place where they were even thinking. They didn't even have an idea of where they wanted to move it. And this is just one more example of once again. First, you have corporations who, for some reason lately, have decided that they need to get into we have a position on policy stuff. We know that civil rights organizations were leaning on corporate America to try and get the not just the All-Star game, but try and get the Masters moved out of Georgia. There is no Masters without Georgia. I don't get this. But the idea that now you can go after corporations and force corporations to then pressure local governments, in order to get them to change a policy, all the while lying about exactly what it is that policy does. And I think that's the next thing we need to really focus on is, all of this, Mike, is based on lies. All right? Just flat out lies. First of all, the first thing that they do is they say, well, this bill was put together by racists for racists in order to institute racism. You have the president of the United States himself saying that this is worse than Jim Crow. Now, I wasn't alive during Jim Crow, but I've read enough, I've seen enough, I've heard enough about Jim Crow, and last I checked, there's no poll tax. We're not talking about, you don't have to take any poll tests, any tests to be able to vote. Last I checked, none of the horrific things that took place during Jim Crow seem to be taking place in regards to this. I'm looking at a law that applies to absolutely everybody. Right? They're saying, well, you're not allowed to feed people who are in line. Well, what they don't want is they don't want electioneering, but they're saying, well, no one can have water while they're in line, and they're cutting away and they're reducing the number of the opportunity to vote and the number of hours or days to vote only in black neighborhoods. These are the lies that they are telling. And the thing that's frustrating about it is every time I've tried to debate somebody on it, every time I've talked to somebody about it, I ask, first question is, did you read the bill? And, they'll either say no or they'll say yes. And when they say yes, I say, okay, so then tell me exactly what in the bill is racist. What in the bill makes this worse than Jim Crow? Well, it impedes people's ability to vote. Okay, how? And with that, I get absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
What I get every single time is these, the people who put it together are racist and they're racist. And so racist. And I'm like,
yeah, we've actually got, racism coming from both sides, right now, being thrown at, I'm sorry, racists coming from all directions being thrown at this problem right now. And you've got the Republicans that put this together based on what they saw wrong with going on with the voting law. The story you and I were just recently looking at, doing all our research, every story starts off with, this is a response to the baseless allegations of voter fraud from the Trump administration. Baseless. Okay. All right. Listen, hey, Georgia, I believe it was your state where we saw suitcases full of ballots being pulled out from underneath a table and counted and run through the machines over and over again after you'd already closed for the night and not allowed any other observers in. You want to talk about baseless? You don't have a foot to stand on. None at all. It's because of you. Now, listen, this happened before. Craig, if you remember, Florida was the joke of voting around the world for almost 20 years, starting with the Chad issue. And we saw 2 or 3 counties here, same thing that we saw in Georgia, 2 or 3 counties that would wait until very late in the middle of the night, poof, dump 40, 50, 60, 100,000 votes towards one candidate or the other and have no proof of where they came from. Well, when Florida's governor came in, Governor DeSantis came in and saw all of this, he immediately got these laws passed, immediately got them passed. And guess what we had this past election cycle? No voter fraud. We had it when President Trump got elected 4 years ago, just over 4 years ago, and he went down there and the voter fraud was so rampant. And the election fraud, let's say election fraud, not voter fraud, election office fraud, was so rampant that he went in and relieved one, gave the other the choice to relieve or get out. She got out, put in 2 new people, and No issue
Well,
since. It's been perfect. And that's something that Georgia just now has put in with Governor
but
Kemp
Mike,
there is the
it's
ability to take out the
right.
head of a local elections office if there's crime and fraud.
Right. But Mike, it's not just about fraud, it's about incompetence. Because when
Yes.
you look at when people
Yes.
start talking about like long voting lines and everything along those lines, it almost always happens in Democrat areas that are run by Democrats. It's amazing how in many of these states, in areas where Republicans are running the election process, that they don't seem to have any problems with long lines. They don't seem to have any problems with machines breaking down, but it's always in Democrat run areas. Like, I mean, let's talk about, I mean, that really gets into some of the really the lies that are being told, right? And the truth about what the bill does and doesn't do. So, for example, one of the things they're upset about is they say, well, this gives the state the ability to go in and control or run elections in local areas, and they're afraid that that's going to affect the certification process of ballots. But really, what it's about recognizing that in many of these areas, and in Georgia in particular, in Fulton County, where the elections year after year after year have been a hot ghetto mess, right? For some reason, they just can't seem to get their act together. So in this particular case, the state can actually help them get their act together. So you don't have long voting lines, so that you don't have machines breaking down or in disrepair, so that you have ballots you have some integrity in the ballots where you don't have the opportunity for election fraud. But when you have incompetence, and then you have people who use that incompetence, in my opinion, in order to institute malfeasance
Yeah.
or cheat, then you have people looking to do that, and that's what this bill stops. If y'all in Georgia, in Atlanta, if y'all don't want to stand in long lines, you ought to be happy, right? If you want to be able to vote by mail, because by the way, that's the other thing that this thing did. It actually made it so that you don't have to have an excuse to vote by mail. You don't have to have a reason why you're not going to the polls. You can actually just request a mail-in ballot, which by the way didn't exist before. They don't
Right.
tell you that. They don't want to tell you that. They want to tell you, well, they're affecting your ability. Oh, by the way, they want to tell you, now we're going to require you to get an ID in order to be able to vote. Well, actually, what this bill does, it removes the questionable like signature thing where you have to get a signature. You have to verify a signature, and it actually just allows someone to utilize their ID. That's how they check people. Now, I'm just going to say this, and this is the worst part about this whole thing, when people talk about this. All right, so 69% of black voters support the idea of voter identification.
Right.
An overwhelming percentage of Republicans, Democrats, Independents all support voter ID, right?
Right.
And this is why, because it is highly insulting to believe that black people are not smart enough, are not intelligent enough, are not resourceful enough to get an ID and a state identification, especially when one is being given to you for free.
Yeah, again, no poll tax, because if you want to get a state identification card, you can get your state identification card. It looks just like your driver's license, but it says identification card on it. Now, if you want to go get your driver's license, that's still going to cost you money. But if you're out there and you say, well, I don't have an ID and it's going to cost me money to get an ID, so that makes it a poll tax because I have to have an ID to vote. No, ID's for free. It's for free. Just go ahead and get it. You know, the other ironic thing about this, Greg, is that this is one of the issues the Major League Baseball had, was the voter ID, having to have the ID to vote, being unconstitutional and racist and unfair to black people. Yet if you go to any Major League Baseball team or website and buy tickets, and it says if you choose will call, that when you come to the park you must show ID to get your tickets from the window.
Racist Major League Baseball.
Yeah.
I mean, the levels of hypocrisy. You have the NAACP, who is totally against the idea of voter identification. Well, guess
Right.
what you have to show in order to vote in NAACP elections? You have to show an ID.
An ID, yeah. And listen, listen, from 100 years ago, where voter ID was, voter suppression, because you went to the polls, you didn't have your ID, you got sent to go get one, you got to the ID place and they charged you $100, or it was closed already and it was only open yesterday. Yeah, that was all voter suppression. This is not what's going on now. This is just get your ID. We'll help you get it. It's free. It's ridiculous. We're using the argument from 100 years ago about ID.
So let's talk about what the bill actually does do. All right.
Yeah.
So first and foremost, what the bill does, and then once again, it's in response to not just this past election, and there are some things from this past election, but also elections before that. But specifically dealing with this past election, what they wanted to address was, number one, the idea of the voter boxes was not codified in law. They wanted to actually codify it in law. The Election Commission had actually approved these drop-off boxes for ballots. There was no regulation. There was nothing that said when, where, and how they need to be, how many there could be, or anything like that. This just codified that all in law. So that's number one. Number two, what it did was it actually expanded the number of weekend voting days. So instead of just one Saturday, you now have two, and now you also have 2 Sundays, right? And then on top of that, now, mind you, they did reduce the number of weeks, but during the week, what they also did was they added hours. So it's not just 9 to 5 Monday through Friday, but it's now you can go up to 9 a.m. Up to 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Right? So 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. they added in the morning, and 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. in the evening. So it fully expanded. So for people, unless you work a 12-hour day, 5 days a week for 3 weeks, guess what? You've just increased the opportunity for people to be able to vote, right? It changed, got rid of the question, because got rid of the questionable signature requirement, because a lot of ballots in the past were being denied because the signatures didn't match. So there's no more signature matching. What they're doing now is they're going to they're going to utilize the identification, which almost every Georgia voter has, almost every single one. And if you don't have one, you can get one for free, right? Now, it also made it, and this is the whole thing, this is one of the big ones about the whole water thing, about not being able to give people food and water while they're in line. Well, first and foremost, you shouldn't be in line that long. It actually puts requirements on the local elections that, look, you have to go and you have to measure at least 3 times a day how long the wait is. And if it's over an hour, you have to add more voting machines, right? Or you are going to be financially penalized. In other words, you have to make sure that your voting machines are working. It put things in place to reduce the amount of time that people are going to be required to be in line voting. So that's number one. You shouldn't be in line so long that someone needs to come give you food and water. But having said that, it also made it so that people can't electioneer, right? The bill specifically says you can't hand out gifts, including food and drink, and while people are standing in line, because that's electioneering. Because we know whether it's the NRA or it's the local union or Black Lives Matter, we all know we don't want people in line handing out free stuff to encourage people to vote for their candidate. That's just not ethical. What it does allow for the county election officer, whoever's running the election at that polling place, they can put out a thing for people to be able to get water. It'll be unmanned or unwomaned, for those of y'all who get stuck on that. But will allow people, so if you need water, you can get water. Now, that's what the bill does.
It's designed to stop people from coming up to the line and going, sports drinks for Bernie, and trying to hand them to the voter. It gets rid of that. It gets, like you said, the election. You could put up a full on free lemonade stand and let them have free lemonade. That's it. Just get your lemonade. If you want a 55-gallon drum full of iced water with water bottles, go right ahead and get it. It keeps people from going around going, there you go, snacks for Biden. They're trying to sway you and take your vote away from you. And, Craig, you just talked about the voter hours and the hours out there. Like you said, they did cut the number of weeks, but ironically, when you go back and you do the math now, because of expanded hours on the days and expanded weekends, it is 3 weeks shorter. I went from 7 weeks to 4 weeks, but you have more time. It's more time available to go vote than you had before.
In 116 counties, you actually have more hours voting.
Yeah.
I'm dumb. I am dumbfounded with the number of people who are willing to sit back and on ignorance repeat lies.
Yeah.
Flat out repeat lies. And then when their lies are debunked, they play the race card. And folks, this this is what bothers me the most, and it bothers me for multiple reasons. Number one, you have people who are upset because they're like, "Well, why did they pass this bill in the dark of night? Why didn't they sit down and negotiate with Democrats?" And I'm like, my first response is this: is that one, I don't know that they didn't because I'm not in Georgia, so I don't know that they didn't. But here's what I do know: I do know that if I sit down with you, if someone sits down with you, and the first thing you do is say, "Well, you're a racist," that's really going to put a dent in any opportunity to really be able to have an open and honest discussion when your first response is to call someone a racist. And that's all they do. They're like, just because you want to change the law makes you racist. And so that's number one. So you can't really have open and honest discussion and debate when one side is operating is not negotiating in good faith. Number one. But then number two, you demean every instance of real racism when there is actual real racism. If you want people to listen to you, to recognize that there are racist incidents and things that occur, and there are racist people, they're out there. I know they're out there. But the problem is that you can't every single time someone disagrees with you call them racist. You cannot well, I guess you can, because that's exactly what they're doing. Yeah. But you then take away from real instances of racism. And when racism actually does occur, the people who you want to listen to you, the people who once were willing to listen to you, they're not going to listen anymore because they know that you're going to call everything racist. You've become the boy that cries racist.
Yeah, exactly right. Craig, that'd be a great little kid's book, wouldn't it? The Boy That Cried Racist. The other issue in this whole voter law that the other big one that's getting attention is runoffs and how they deal with runoffs. And listen, folks, whatever state you happen to be listening to us in or watching us in, runoffs in Georgia are done a little bit different than every other state, at least at the state level. In Georgia, you have to get the majority of the vote, over 50%, in order to move on to that next step. If you have less than 50% of the vote, you're not declared the winner. So they go to a runoff election with the two highest people. So this happens a lot, and you'll see this in local elections, county and city elections. It still happens all over the country. You'll get 7 people running for mayor, and nobody gets higher than 25%. So you go through the first round of voting, and whoever the top 2 are, then they go to the second round of voting. So one of them gets over 50%. Georgia still does that at the state level, not just the local level. The issue was, they said, with absentee ballots, those that legitimately get an absentee ballot will not be able to respond in time because they cut the time period down. Again, remember, from 7 weeks to 4 weeks, or it might even be 3 weeks now. So it's a harder turnaround time on those absentee ballots. So what they've done on the absentee ballots, this is wonderful, is now instead of picking your one candidate, you rank your candidates. So if there's 5 candidates, you rank them in order from number 1 to 5. So guess what? If it gets to a runoff election, they still have your vote. They go back through and go, well, no, this person lost, so his next vote would have been for so-and-so. So they've taken care of that problem also. They're not taking away the ability for absentee ballots to be turned in time. No, they figured that problem. They figured that out. They've got an answer to the problem.
Well, the other thing is, I'm sorry, but 4 weeks for a runoff election is more than enough. You have to figure they've already campaigned. Yeah. They already know. I mean, you figure once you know there's going to be a runoff, within that first week, the ballots go out.
Yep.
You have then about 3 weeks to turn in your ballot because, once again, it's based on it's based on what it's postmarked. So there's not a problem. I mean, once again, even if I'm going to say this, even if you want to disagree with that method, how is that method racist? What makes that inherently racist? That's what I want to know. I would really like to know what makes it inherently racist. And once again, they've got absolutely nothing. But that's the way in which they debate against policy for which they have no answer.
Yeah, it's throwing that race card out there. Earlier we started this conversation with the corporate sponsors, and how corporate sponsors all of a sudden have this ability to dictate policy. Listen, it's only a matter of days before we see Hollywood trying to flex their muscle again, and they did this with in California. Here in Georgia, they said we're going to take all of our production out of there and back to California. Well, first off, go ahead, try and go back to California and see what the rates are there to do production now. But these corporate sponsors, I mean, I'm going to go back 2 administrations. I'm going to go back to the Obama administration, where this was given to them, the ability for Hollywood and corporate sponsors to be able to flex their muscle politically. Listen, President Trump did a great job of squashing that crap right away. You know, they would come up and complain, and he'd go, "Tell you what, here's the deal. You either start, having jobs, you come back to the United States, or we take away your tax breaks and put an excise tax on you, an import tax on you." And they shut up and they started producing. Well, all of a sudden, again, now we got a president where it's okay for corporate ideals, and their own independent opinions to make the news. And here we are again, back to where we were, back to where let's let corporations worry about corporate business and let's let politicians worry about politics. Obviously, there's going to be influence and there's going to be action between the two, but to try and move a baseball game because of racism, crap. Hey, baseball, guess what? I want you to go back and talk to the NFL 4 years ago and see where they were, 5 years ago and see where they were. Now, listen, everybody didn't make as much money last year because of COVID, but guess what? Over 100%, more than half of their earnings are lost because of this getting into politics nonsense. NBA, same way. You ready for it, baseball? Because guess what? You were the last one, and it's going to happen, and you're going to be hurting bad over this.
Oh yeah, I unfortunately, as you know, I'm not a huge baseball fan, so I rarely, if ever, tuned in. And now they've pretty much guaranteed I'll never tune in.
Yeah.
I stopped watching the NBA. Last year was the first year I had not watched the NBA Finals in my entire adulthood, and I still, even to this day, have not watched an NBA game. Just because, once again, not just that I don't want politics in my sports, but I especially don't want ignorant people. And I feel very comfortable calling many of the people who are speaking to stuff either ignorant or corrupt. And I'll specifically name out LeBron James because LeBron, you want to talk about how African Americans, how black people are denigrated here in the United States, how we're oppressed here in the United States, yet you refuse to say anything about China where your shoes are made, and they have actual slaves. They have actually said, I wonder if any slaves are making your shoes. I don't know that they are, but it wouldn't surprise me if they were. Maybe that's why you don't want to say anything. Maybe the fact that the Chinese government is actually trying to oppress religious minorities by sending rape squads after their women, maybe you don't want to talk about all that because, well, it might affect your bottom line. What's funny is that I see a lot of this stuff, and it's real easy for people to say, "Oh, talk about how brave it is to stand up against racism." But my issue is this: is that we are the freest, wealthiest, most educated, and prosperous peoples of African descent in the entire world. We are. I mean, I'm not saying that everything is perfect and everything is equal, but we're doing pretty darn good here. And the very fact that you are willing to tear all of that down in the name of looking popular, well, forget you, bruh.
Yeah.
I got nothing. I got nothing for you. I got no love for you. Sorry, none.
Done. Absolutely. Let me give one more message out to Major League Baseball, and I know there's huge fans out there that are going to be hurting, and we're right here at the start of the season. I will probably still follow my team. Let's say that, follow my team, unless they start in with this kneeling crap during the national anthem and everything else. Then you're going to see an even bigger break. But I'm telling you right now that the Major League Baseball will get no money from me. They're going to get zero from me, and you're going to see a lot of people voting with their wallet. And I'm also going to tell you, your corporate sponsors, I am going to go out of my way to make sure they do not get my money, and probably make sure their competition gets my money. You want to play these games? We'll play our games too.
Exactly. So with our parting shot today, I wanted to show you guys this. So we all know that, and once again, this is just one more instance of the Democratic Party playing the race card. And for those of you who really do care about equality, care about equity, who care about, really kind of coming together as a people, just know this, that playing the race card does the exact opposite. We will never be able to come together as a people unless people can be honest about what is going on, can be honest about policy. And when you play the race card, members of the Democratic Party, all you do is you show your dishonesty.
Yeah.
And it is harming our country on a massive level. And I for one, want to see you stop so that we can actually start solving some of these issues and some of these challenges in these United States.
Agreed. Craig couldn't have said it better myself. Perfect way to end.
Excellent. Well, hey, folks, that's going to be it for this episode of The Rundown. We very much appreciate you guys tuning in. We appreciate you liking, sharing, and subscribing to The Rundown.
Thanks for joining us, folks. We'll see you on Tuesdays.
All right. See you tomorrow.